Hey everybody, it's Trekyards time. Welcome back. I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Klingon Qatlh, and today, on Saturday, we like to look at ships. Star Trek ships. Stuart, a novel concept I know.
And today we're looking at, hopefully I can pronounce this correctly, the Klingon Qatlh class. It's from Star Trek Discovery.
It's one of the expanded fleet that was seen in Battle of Binary Star, and then around the place. It's one of the several variants, because there are like 4 ships that are roughly the same. This is one of the slightly more different versions. We thought we'd take a up close and look at this licensed, if not the original 3D model, and see what we think, because boy, the CGI in Season 1 was very dark. We haven't seen it in Season 2 yet, so it's nice to see it in its own context and the scale, and just how it feels. So Stuart, what do you think about the design from the offset on this Klingon pre-TOS battleship?
First off, I have to say it's much more Klingon-like than some of the other ships we've seen. I haven't actually covered. It's almost feels part of the same fleet as the Sarcophagus ship, because it's got similar design call-outs there. Visible guns, which is cool. You get a sense of scale. I can't see this being very big, but yeah, it's got kind of a Batman vibe to it as well, so that kind of ties into the gothic nature that we've seen from the new Klingons, but this one I think steps away from that a tad and has more of that Klingon feel. You know, if you moved a few things around and kept basically the same texturing and things, you could have a very Klingon looking ship, and I think it's got kind of a Klingon silhouette.
Yeah, this is obviously the Season 1 initiative for the Klingon designer was not make Klingon looking ships. They can't look like anything previously, and so obviously we're trying to compare it. It doesn't look Klingon per se. You can sort of, you know, swap and change, but if you have swap and change that much, it shows it wasn't designed to look. The fact that it's got head and a boom is pretty much its thing, and that's kind of its only thing. It's very organic feeling in comparison, and I think this also stems from things like the Bird of Prey and other ships where they didn't actually try and flesh out what things were. So what are the glowing things? Where are the windows? Like, there isn't thought put in the same way that, especially Voyager and Enterprise was put in, where it was all, you know, they weren't even allowed to use certain ships until they were changed because the scale of the windows are wrong. You know, things were put in. So this is very sort of abstract. It's form over function, and I guess, I mean, does it even look aggressive? Because to me it kind of does, but it loses something when you put it all together. Like, it's meant to have these spiky outer bits, but it comes across as also kind of blocky and unimpressive, so it doesn't have an aggressive feel to me personally.
I mean, from certain angles it does feel kind of aggressive when it's pointed at you specifically. It could come across that way. There are a lot of guns on this thing, like I said, on the inner wing portion as well as the head of the ship. So it does have, if you're scanning for weapons, this thing's aggressive. It doesn't feel predatory, I guess, is the best way to put that. Like, I find that the Klingon D7s from the TOS series felt very predatory. They had that look. They just looked aggressive. This one doesn't quite have that. It would depend on the sizing. I mean...
Ah, yes, the sizing. Let's not try and guess. There are no windows. There is no scale information. Here is the official scaling. It is massive. As you can see, we've got the Canon D7, which is still, again, the Canon scale for the D7 from TOS. You've got the Connie from TOS. You've got the Connie from Discovery, which evolves into the Connie from TOS, because that's how Canon works. And then you've got this Klingon ship. And as you can see, it is absolutely enormous, completely blows out of the water anything in the era. Nothing compared to the Sarcophagus ship, but continues the line of Klingons make big and then make really small in a few years.
I didn't expect it to be this big.
Pretty big.
Because I just went off saying that it doesn't feel that big, just because I was basing it on the size of the guns. Like, I didn't expect the guns to be so large. Kind of makes sense, though. I mean, with the Klingons, they are aggressive, so they would have the larger guns. But it's hard when there's no visible windows to judge scale, I guess. The head of it looks like it has some kind of window thing going on, but it's the same glows as on the engines, or whatever those are at the side, and that back part. So it's hard to define that. You know, if you really want to say those are windows, then it looks like a one-person fighter, because one person could fit in that ball part, much like a TIE fighter. So that's the problem with scaling. I don't know. I did not expect it to be this big.
So it's a mid-range. It's not the smallest battleship, but it's bigger than all the secondary things like the Blade ship, the Torch, the Sect class, and other things. But it's definitely sort of mid-range. And Eaglemoss describes it as a battle cruiser, I believe. So it's in that vein. But as you can see, the Klingon tech really does shrink a lot in just a couple of years, and we've yet to see, or we've yet to see, / we're going to see the D7 hopefully end of Discovery Season 2, and hopefully that'll be scaled something, but you know, we'll see. The side view though, Stuart, let's compare it to the Vorchar, which is mid to late TNG, the pride of the fleet, one of the biggest ships at the time. As you can see, it still far outstretches the Vorchar, which just implies that they really did shrink down their classes in the next couple of 100 years for some reason.
Older tech takes up more room. It's big boilers and, like, you know, deuterium tanks that are just like ginormous. I don't know.
It's one of those things where to make things seem opposing, you just increase the scale, and doesn't equate strength, power, and in fact it increases weakness in a lot of ways. Although then the amount of time to build these things. But as we know, this is the house ship of one of the houses. It's just sort of one of them. We don't know which, we don't know how. But as you can see, it certainly outstretches any fleet.
Yeah, from pre-TOS all the way up to TNG. It's still bigger than...
Scimitar length. I mean, obviously length is not, even window size, you can see how many decks. I mean, it's a lot of decks. Also incredibly flat. That's a very dull side profile. It's kind of got nothing going for it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. There are certain features on it, though, that make it look like it has a face.
Yes.
From certain angles, when you see it, it does kind of have that slanty eye with like a face mask, almost like a Decepticon, or it looks almost snake-like too.
Oh, certainly.
With the scaling on the front there.
Yeah. But if we go to the back view, I actually really like this view. I think it's a cool view, lots of interesting shapes, hard edges and soft. I mean, this isn't the most high poly model, but it is licensed based on orthographics, so it is accurate in dimensions. Certainly interesting, and you can sort of understand it better, I think, from this perspective. But at the same time, there's impulse engines probably. Where is the weapon? Like, where's the torpedo launchers? Where's whatever? Again, designed for function and not necessarily to be seen close. The fact that Eaglemoss and such are making miniatures of these things is yay, we can make miniatures on ships that weren't really thought out, and not even used in Season 2 as far as the season goes so far. Just kind of imagery for the sake of it rather than anything ship-wise.
I do like this back view as well, but one thing I like to do with these ships, and I've talked about this a few times, is change the direction of flight. Like, you make this the front of the ship with that trailing middle part going back. I think it works. It reminds me a lot of the Merchantman ships, or the Merchantman ship, or even the Cardassian ships. A little bit of a Cardassian influence. Like, I could see this being a pre-TOS Cardassian ship for sure if you did that. I think it has more of that vibe to it, but I do like the detailing on it, like the scale, is kind of interesting. Don't know what that is referring to specifically, but it almost feels like an armor plate. And even the intricacies of the whatever they are, the arches, the way they're layered and going back to the nacelles, it's a nice look. Like, don't get me wrong, the Klingon ships in Discovery are really intricately done, and when you get a model of them, they're so nice to look at. They just don't really feel Klingon.
Or spaceships.
I can buy the spaceship thing.
I think they need to be at least 25% different to be spaceships, and then 65% different to be Klingon ships.
65 is a good number for that. Yeah, I would say so.
Not undoable though, and I would certainly love at some point for us to take that challenge upon ourselves and redesign the shapes as Klingon appropriate designs, because they're not their bad shapes. It's just they're not designed to be Klingon, and you can tell that in the design process, certainly. But let's go to the next one, the underview. Again, really cool, great texture, interesting looking. Again, doesn't look very functional. There's no Klingon symbols, which would have been kind of nice. There's no,
Well, that's because that's the United Klingon Defense Force symbol. All the houses have their own different unique symbols.
Well, where's that then? That's a
I
good
have
point.
no idea.
Well, they don't want to commit to a house being, make different houses. But again, it's this ship that's clearly lacking all the details needed for it to be a clearly ship.
Yeah, as I said in my One Ego Mouse review of the other class of ship, they seem like keys. They look like an ancient, elaborate key for a nice skeleton lock.
Yeah.
I do like the amount of guns on it. Again, that makes it feel aggressive, but they're just so damn huge. Then, if that's the size, it says more primitive to me for sure. Just because of that size, and even the weapons, they have to be this big just because they're older tech. Which I really don't have a problem with. If it's a certain house ship, they have older tech, I guess.
Although multiple variants. I mean, this shape is basically 4 of the ships in the fleet. Well, I mean, it's the Vuklach, the Baros, the Quay, and the Kwa. Looking at the Egamos scale chart, all the same rough design. Then you have 2 that look very similar, the Chagach and the Jach. And then you have alternates like the Guk, and so it's just a style, and yes, it's a variation on a theme. I think this one's actually more interesting than some of them. It's slightly more broken up. It feels a bit more cohesive.
I mean, it does have some sort of vague Klingon D7 shapes to it, just with cutout pieces, and I can see that. So
that's why I focus on this one as well, because this one I think is a bit closer than some of the other ones.
Yeah. For sure.
Next picture though is a front. This one is a great view. It looks like an alien demon, alien dragon coming at camera. I mean, that's got to have been deliberate. I mean, it's a great view as a living creature. I would have bought this as a living creature ship, from some weird other race.
Got the fangs and the eyes and the scales. It's just, yeah. It would be cool if they had the Klingons wore like battle helmets like they did in Into Darkness, but that design for this house, that would be a nice tie-in with these ships. I just think, because that would work as a helmet for sure.
Well, the next shot's a close with it, and you can see all the guns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm wondering what the focus is, because they don't feel like disruptor turrets in the same way. So I'm guessing they're phasers, but phasers.
Well, some might be communication arrays or whatever as well, right? So.
That's the thing, isn't it?
And the next shot is the wing guns.
Yeah, there's some disruptors there.
Yeah, some of them look like they're on turrets too, which I kind of like because that ties in with the Enterprise era. Because a lot of those were turret, driven guns.
And maybe that second inner gun, or second outer gun, sorry, is a torpedo launcher. It's actually got a hole for them to come out of, maybe. I mean, it's a torpedo launcher, maybe. Because it's a huge ship, therefore the scale is all very that's big enough for a torpedo. It's a massive ship.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Another view of the back. Now, the back is interesting because the way that those grid lines are in that back dome part, it reminds me of the Klingon bird of prey with the wings, with the finning, which we never really get a sense of where nacelles are on the bird of prey. It fits in with the back part of the ship being in the engineering section, whether they're cooling fins or whatever. There's lots of different tie-ins with that. So I kind of like that in a way. It's not a huge visual tie-in, but it's one anyway. So.
Yep. And the next picture is a view of the official model. I believe, or concept-y, but it's more artistic, and you can see it do its thing, but in a different context. And it's very, very artsy, very, very something else. I mean, this is a story we hear all the time with the kind of stuff, but it's the fact that if you tell a talented artist to design ships that don't look like the race they're from, and then he has a couple of shapes he likes, and then goes with them, and then they approve them without thinking about the repercussions, this is what you get. It's a case study in terms of art design that you shouldn't do.
Interesting take on it, sure. This one seems a little bit more elaborate and kind of finished.
Well, high
I don't know.
detail.
It's just, yeah, it's got better texturing. So
And is it worth, saying they also know their mistake, because season 2 we have the D7 and the first episode of the Klingons appear, so clearly there's a progression towards going back to what we know. Well, back to the Klingon stuff. Well,
I guess that's it for this ship. What do you guys think of the design? We always like to hear your comments. And don't forget, if you want to help us out, you can do so. You can head on over to Patreon, help us on a monthly basis. Don't forget to join our Super Chat lives. We do them every week. We have great topics, and you can Super Chat and help us out that way. Or head on over to Trekyards.com, click the donate button. There's PayPal information as well in the description. So those will all help us out. Plus, we have our Teespring store. Lots of cool Trekyards merch if you want to get something to represent that you love our show and at the same time help us out. That's another way as well.
and of course you can like and subscribe and be part of the community by sharing the things that we do on Trekyards. We do them all the time for amazing people like you and you and you and you. And of course, support us on Patreon, like Stuart said. Support us on our weekly Super Chat lives. Those are also amazing. Buy things. Do Eagle Moss, because you can eventually get the ship as an Eagle Moss model if you do love it, just as a cool design. The only place you're going to be able to get it is Eagle Moss. Do get it from Eagle Moss and use the code Trekyards at checkout, and then you get to enjoy it for a little bit less.
Anyway, guys, until next time, I'm Captain Foley.
And Klingon Qatlh.
Bye.
Bye, guys.